episode of Inside the Recording Studio. I am Jody Whitesides, and with me, as always, is Mr. Chris Hellstrom. How are you today, Chris?
I am doing really, really well, Jody.
Yeah.
I am really excited today because this morning we get to talk to an old friend of ours, an amazing drummer, and an even better person. Christopher Allis joins us today on the
Hello,
podcast.
everybody.
Welcome to the show, Christopher. How are you?
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm doing okay. Thank you. I've got my little drink and ready to talk shop. So
Sweet.
Awesome. Very good. So what do you think, Jody? Should we just dive right into it? Because I think there's a lot of meat that we kind of want to get to today.
Yeah, there's so much meat. We might actually break this down into two pieces, like 2 episodes, but let's just dive right in.
I think we should. So, Christopher, maybe you can I already introduced you as a drummer here, session drummer, live drummer, anything drum related, but perhaps you can tell us a little bit about who you are, your background, and what you find yourself doing these days.
Sure. I've been out in Los Angeles now for quite a number of years. I grew up in upstate New York in Syracuse. My dad's a drummer, my mom sings, so music was always in the house. So I gravitated to music and specifically the drums really early, about 4 years old. So I've been playing professionally since I was about 15 or so.
So 4 or 5 years now then.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Exactly. After university, I made the decision to move out here. I didn't really have much in terms of expectations of what was going to happen other than just kind of wanting to be in a larger city and, kind of get my ass handed to me a little bit and see what happens. And I've been able to kind of create for myself a little universe. I've carved a niche for myself, kind of based on the way that I approach the drums. And through that, headspace and through that evolution, I've been able to recorded and toured with Dina Carter of Strawberry Wine fame, Michael Nesmith from the Monkees. I was just on Mickey Dolenz' new album, which was cool. Played obviously with Jody and you back in the day, live and some recording. I do a lot of TV and film stuff right now for different producers and composers, a lot of library stuff as well, where it's kind of a work for hire and kind of catch as catch can. Well, when there's a pandemic going on, a lot of local and kind of regional songwriters as well. So I tend to keep myself pretty busy in the main.
Yeah, I think that's, just the situation that you described there, I think it's really common these days where we have to, be as broad as possible and be open to things and not just know this is what I do and just do one thing. We have to be open to try to have our irons in a lot of different fires to kind of stay busy.
Be quick
absolutely.
to pivot.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you need to be able to, you have to be quick to pivot. You really need to be able to adjust at a moment's notice. And you need to be willing to be flexible enough in your desire to really get into and understand and be part of the art, because music isn't just new metal or jazz or pop or country or funk. It's
your
everything.
tongue.
Well, yeah, I've always considered myself to be an omnivore as far as music is concerned. I mean, I certainly have the things that I love a little bit more than others. Like I'm a jazz head and I'll always be a jazz head. Okay. So maybe I take that particular approach or that particular vibe into all of my different playing situations, but I'm still playing for whatever the music happens to be.
Yeah, that's a lesson that I think a lot of people, not everybody does that right off the bat, but it's something that Jody and I have spoken about, not necessarily just on the podcast, but just in general, how you sort of adopt that mindset as you get a little bit more experience. I think that you start realizing that it's not about your chops, it's about the song.
Yeah, it's always about playing for the song. And just as Chris is mentioning there, last night, I actually was pulling out a song as we had spoken off air about the fact that I'm transcribing older tunes. And the one that I happened to pull out last night was one called Leads to Gold, which you played on. You played brushes on it. And
Okay.
I believe that was the one that we did use a live kit on it, because there were a few times I think I had you recording with a V drum kit and live cymbals.
Yep.
But that one had the live brushes on the snare. It's one of those things where it was like that song required that vibe on it in terms of the drums, and it illustrates so perfectly what you just said. It's like, rather than worrying about the chops, it's playing for the vibe of the song or what the song needs.
You have to be willing to do it. You have to be playing what's idiomatically correct for whatever it is that you're getting called to do.
Sure.
And if you're not willing to do that, well, you're probably not going to get an awful lot of calls as time goes on. I want to keep getting a lot of calls. So not only does it behoove me to do what I'm talking about, but I actually enjoy it, because I always wind up learning something. If somebody's turning me on to a particular artist and I need to cop that vibe, well, now I've got another color in my palette that I can draw from. And that's ultimately, that's what being, and I don't mean to use this word too flamboyantly, but that's what being an artist is all about. Being able to pull from all these different disparate palettes or whatever in order to create something that is uniquely you. So I love it. I get off on it.
Steal from multiple sources.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's all about vocabulary, isn't it? I mean, whatever your musical instrument is, or even if we're talking just from mixing engineering standpoint or producer standpoint, you learn little things along the way that you think, oh, that sounds really good. That's a cool technique. I might not use that on every track that I do, but it's going to be great if I come up against this one more time. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to go back a little bit to when you said you moved out to LA, just to kind of pick your brain a little bit on this. Did you always have as a goal to sort of end up more or less as a session drummer, or did you have the usual sort of like dream where you're like, I want to be, in
Jeff
your
Porcaro.
case, perhaps like, right, or, Vinnie Colaiuta or somebody along those lines. Did you ever have the aspiration of being a sort of band member in a band that was going to kind of make it big, or did you always have your eyes set on more the session scene, I guess?
Well, it's interesting because when you mentioned Jeff Porcaro and Vinnie Colaiuta, I mean, obviously incredible session players, though, Jeff with his time with Toto, and then Vinnie with his time with Zappa and with his time with Sting and Jeff Beck and all that. So certainly they played with plenty of bands. But I mean, I was in a band, I was in several bands back in Syracuse, and one of them, which was a ska band at that particular point in time when ska really had a resurgence, and it was a wonderful band, and we did a record. It was a subsidiary of Moon Records, so we were doing very well, but I was getting kind of bored with my own playing. I was getting bored with where I was. So when I moved out to LA, I never wanted to be a rock star. I can honestly say that. That faded away by the time I was 16 or 17, because I saw people. Well, I saw people strutting around my hometown thinking they were rock stars, and I was like, well, I certainly don't want to be that.
Right. Okay.
I'd rather be somebody who, it's a very kind of like workaday craftsman kind of approach. It's like, I want to go and I want to do my job, and I want to do it really, really, really well. Mm. So all I wanted to do was be successful in really very much a crapshoot kind of business, which is music, which is the arts in general.
Yes.
But that's what I wanted to do. So I was like, okay, well, how do I make that a reality for myself? I'd have the experiences with different bands. And when I moved out to LA, obviously I knew that I was dropping myself into a much, much larger pool. But if I was able to make myself stand out in some way, maybe I would be able to start getting little sessions here or there, and then just kind of see if I can snowball everything. And that's essentially what wound up happening. I had a couple of really wonderful people that saw what was going on and saw what I was wanting to do, and they just started recommending me for things.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's slowly, very slowly, but slowly built from there. And, you have to have patience.
Yeah.
You really, really have to have patience. And not a lot of people do. Again, because they want to be rock stars.
Yeah, it's not an overnight business. Or it happens in the middle of the night, but it's not overnight.
Yeah, I mean, it's you're a 10 or 15 or 20-year overnight success. I mean, that's kind of the joke, and you read it time
Yeah.
and time again in interviews. But I feel very fortunate to have kind of for lack of a better term, the cachet that I do right now within the music community, and I appreciate the fact that I'm getting called, and I'm always going to bring my A game when I do get called. So, you know,
Well, there you go.
that's kind of
There's the
it
hidden
right there.
speech right there. Bring your
Yeah.
A game whenever you get called.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to.
Very cool.
You absolutely have to.
Maybe we should switch gears a little bit and kind of go into a little bit more of the nuts and bolts here of when you have a recording session.
Okay.
So let's get a little technical, shall we? My first question that I wanted to ask you here is, and I think I know your answer, but I'm going to let you answer it by yourself.
Never assume, Chris. Never assume.
I know. But when you go into a session, do you generally bring, what's the size of your kit is essentially what I'm trying to ask here.
It's session dependent.
Ding, ding, ding.
I tend to,
Everybody take a shot right now.
yeah, I tend to run one bass drum, one rack tom, two floor toms.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a 5-piece kit, but it's a 1 up, 2 down, as we call it. So I'll usually come in with that. I might bring an additional bass drum if they want, like, I'll bring an 18 and a 20, or I'll bring a 20 and a 24 or whatever, and one will be tuned up really, really high, one will be really thumpy. As far as snare drums go, I'll probably bring a half a dozen snare drums.
Oh, wow. Okay, cool.
Yeah, I'm a Ludwig. I'm fortunate enough to be a Ludwig endorser. I've got a lot of snare drums.
It's a small company. I'm aware of them. Yeah. No.
Yeah.
Jeez. Did you just say a dozen snare drums per session?
No, 6.
Oh,
half
6.
a dozen.
Half dozen. Okay, sorry. I missed that part.
No, half a dozen. So, I'll bring a Black Beauty.
Sure.
I'll bring like a 6.5 Supraphonic, like the Bonham snare drum. I'll bring a couple of different wood options. I'm a really big fan of 8-inch deep snare drums for that birthday cake with a baseball bat kind of gushy sound. And then for cymbals, I'll usually bring 2 bags of cymbals, basically. So that's 2 sets of hi-hats, 2 rides, 5 or 6 different crashes, some effect cymbals. It just, that way I can, no pun intended, kind of cover any base that the producer or the artist or the engineer wind up throwing at me.
Or covering any drum for that matter.
Yeah, basically. And then, different mufflers and stuff as well. Just ways to be able to adjust the tone of the drum kit. So if you want that Abbey Road,
super dead,
tea towel kind of dead thumpy thing, I can do that.
Do you bring tea towels?
I'll bring tea towels, and then I've got relationships with a couple of other companies like Big Fat Snare Drum and Snare Weight as well. And they do, Snare Weight in particular has this wonderful device called an M1. Mm-hmm. And basically it is a piece of leather and with a little half of a binder clip type thing on it. And you can just attach it to the rim.
Oh, wow.
And it takes just a little bit of the overtone and the edge off of toms or snare drum, but it doesn't get goopy and nasty like moon gels and other stuff like that do.
Sure.
So I can use it for ever as long as I take care of it. So I'll utilize those things quite a lot as well. And then tea towels, like basically anything. I'm putting any one of a number of different things on top of the drums, from cymbals and gongs to tea towels to sleigh bells or tambourine jingles. It just all depends.
Sure.
So you bring a fair amount of gear of both shells and cymbals to be prepared for whatever you might get thrown into. But then, and I'm assuming here, but then I'm guessing once you kind of find the sound that's appropriate for the session, you're probably using as few kit pieces and cymbals as is required. Or is it a comfort factor for you to have sort of like your normal live kit there? Or do you feel lost if you're missing a couple of pieces, let's say?
No, not at all. Not at all. There have been plenty of sessions where I've had, kick, snare, hat, And
Right.
that's it, because that's what was required. I don't want the instrument to play me. I want to be able to play the instrument. So I don't want to have my frame of reference be an entire drum kit. I want my frame of reference to be the song.
Sure.
So
That's good. That's good. Yeah.
So is it
So
safe to say that with what you've just said right there, if somebody asked you to play a cardboard box for the drums?
I've done it. Yeah.
Oh,
I've
you've done it. Well, there you go.
Yeah. Yeah, I've done it. There's a great, I remember reading a great story with Kurt Biscara. He was doing what was it? The Wildflower album, Tom Petty's Wildflower album or something. And they couldn't quite get the vibe right. I think this is the story. They couldn't quite get the vibe right on the drum kit. And apparently Kurt was in the control room just kind of slapping his knees, and like tapping his tummy or whatever. And they wound up miking him and doing that because that's what the song required.
There you go.
So yeah, I've had people like, it just doesn't have that thing. Could we try this? And it's like, yeah, sure. Bring in the cardboard box. Or, rather, it wasn't a cardboard box. It was actually, I didn't have a cajon with me.
Mm-hmm.
So somebody literally took a drawer out of something and I just played the drawer.
There you go.
When that's basically how cajons were created anyway. They were just, drawers that, because it was the only thing that was available to,
beating on a
the
dresser.
people that basically, yeah.
Well, that's another interesting thing. Just to make a quick side note, the drummer from the Killers, Ronnie Vannucci, I emailed him not too long ago asking about a certain drum sound that he had gotten because somebody asked me to do a mix in the sound of the Killers. So I emailed him and said, dude, how did you get that sound? He's like, oh, this is what we did. And then I followed it up with like, are you okay with beating on something? And he's like, dude, I'll beat on anything. It doesn't matter as long as it fits what we need to do. So and I find that seems to be pretty common amongst drummers that are on the professional ilk of that nature.
Yeah, I mean, you just can't be too up your own ass about stuff like that because you really can't. Like, I try so hard not to bring my ego into any situation. Obviously, we're talking now, so there's a certain amount of ego associated with this because it's a conversation. But, when I step foot on stage or set foot in the studio, I don't want you to know it's me necessarily. I just want you to know that it feels good. I just want you to be able to tap your foot to it. I want you to know that, well, I got nothing bad to say about the drummer.
That's fantastic.
That's a good spot to be in.
I'm going to pull a sports reference here, right? Because I think it's very apropos to what you're just describing there, Christopher. When you're watching any kind of sport event, if you don't notice that there's a ref in the game, the ref is doing an amazing job, right?
Yeah.
Sort of staying out of the way. And I think in the session world, as you're describing there, or even if it's the live thing, right? If something jumps out at you in the wrong way, even if it's sort of like positive, right? You're kind of overshadowing, and like you said, you're injecting your ego into it. Unless you're, of course, hired to do that, right? But if you're there playing for the song, whatever the artist is, primarily the singer would assumably be the face of the act, right? You're there to support them. So
yeah,
I think that's a great way to describe it, like you just said. That's really, really cool.
Yeah, and it takes the time to be able to develop that. I mean, I don't think a lot of people have that innately, naturally. It takes time to be put in situations where all of a sudden you're like, oh, that's right, it's not about me, is it? And after you have enough of those experiences under your belt, you really are able to start appreciating, oh, right, what's important is what's coming out of that person's mouth.
Yeah.
Not whether I have a 1923 Ludwig brass snare drum or, dig me, I just did whatever album or whatever. It's not about that. It's about helping whatever emotions the song is trying to convey. It's about helping to convey those particular emotions, those particular thoughts.
Sure.
Do you think that the ability to sort of disassociate yourself, or let's say your chops, from the song, Do you think that that comes easier with a certain amount of experience, just like you described, or do you think that it can be one of those cases where perhaps a younger artist, or at least a less experienced artist, are so eager to sort of prove their mettle, if you will? Like, look, I can
Hmm.
do all of this, that you're sort of overplaying and forcing your style into a certain situation just because you're so eager to prove yourself, but you haven't realized yet that I don't have to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, it's all a matter of temperance, really.
Mm,
You have to temper your playing, you have to temper your ego just as you would temper a piece of metal,
right.
basically. So over the course of time, things are going to get tempered in a way, hopefully not in too acerbic a way by an engineer or a producer that was like, dude, can you just, and like, you get pulled aside and you're like, hey, you know what? What's really required is this. Do you think you can do that?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, yeah, sure, okay. You have to want to do it. Again, you have to be willing to do it first. But then with experience, I think it's only naturally going to happen. And if you don't learn with those particular experiences, then there's absolutely no way that you're going to continue to get called for sessions. It's just not going to happen. So that's the way that I've looked at it. That's the way it's worked out for me.
Cool.
That's a good way for it to be looked at too.
I agree. I
All
agree.
right. Let's kind of go back to your nuts and bolts area here, Chris, and add into the next step of the drum kit size. How often are you bringing new skins for your drum heads? And do you actually carry old skins as well? Or once you put new ones on, that's it?
Once I put new ones on, that's it. I have a relationship with Remo. So when I change drum heads, again, pre-pandemic, I would bring my old heads up to the Remo factory, which is up off the 5 in Santa Clarita, because they recycle all the different materials.
Oh, that's awesome.
So they recycle the mylar and the
is great.
aluminum and all that. What I'll do is I'll change top and bottom, and I'll put the date on the bottom head
Oh, wow.
of when I've changed it. That way I have a sense of, okay, this head's been on this long. That means that I've at least done 2 head changes on the top. So I'll probably change the bottom heads probably once a year.
Okay.
And then the top heads, it really just depends on use because I've got a ton of different kits.
Sure.
So the kit that's getting the most use is going to have head changes a bit more frequently than others. But, probably a couple times a year, I'll rehead the tops of the kits. And the head type will change. I've always been a big fan of coated heads on top.
Mm-hmm.
And I've gone back recently to clear heads on the bottom. Just a little bit of snap, a little bit different, something different in the sound. So
Sure.
basically, coated on top, clear on the bottom. And, bottom head once a year, top heads maybe twice a year.
Right. So and along the lines of changing the heads, the type of tuning, do you tune to the key of the song? Do you tune drums to just themselves? How do you go about doing that?
I tend not to tune to the key of the song because, again, drums ultimately are idiophones. So you're not able to really extract a pure, perfect pitch out of them.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm tuning the drum to where I think it wants to go. And each drum is going to have a particular range. Like you can tune a G string lower or higher than a G,
Sure.
but there's going to be a point where it's like, no, it's going to break or whatever.
Right.
And I don't want to choke the drum out either by hitting it too hard or by tuning it somewhere that it doesn't want to go. Now, if there's a particular effect that somebody is going for, I'll entertain messing around with the tuning of the kit, but I tend not to be a big fan of tuning to the key of the song because I don't have the luxury of, like, a band like Tool.
Sure.
A lot of their songs tend to sit within the range of D.
Yeah.
They do the whole drop D thing and all that, so it's easier to tune there. If you know that your band consistently is in that particular range, then sure, if you want to tune to that and, kind of give everything a little bit more power and oomph, sure, but I don't have that luxury.
Mm-hmm.
And I like something that Steve Jordan said, where I'd rather have a lot of drums and have one drum that I know does this thing really well and just leave it.
That's almost like having a limiter that you have set in a rack where you have the input and the output marked with tape. And you know, this is the ideal input-output section for this particular piece of gear.
Yeah, exactly. Or, to bring it even, closer to the instrument realm, you're going to go in with a telly or maybe two tellies because one of them is strung with 8s and one of them is strung with 12s. Your Les Paul is going to be this particular thing. Your Strats are going to be this particular kind of thing. You're not going to change the strings on your telly from an 8 to a 12. You're just going to pick up another telly that has the right string gauge on it. So that's kind of the way that I approach it.
Okay.
Yeah, that's interesting that you bring up there. And I'm almost embarrassed to say that I hadn't thought about this, but it makes sense when you bring up Tool, because I believe this technique of tuning to the key of the song can be a little bit more prominent in the metal world. Mm-hmm. But obviously a lot of certainly like modern metal, when you be having these extreme down tunings, there's usually a reason why you do that. And that's because you tend to utilize that sound, but that also means that that's the sound and the key that you might be using on most songs, as opposed to a pop record where, okay, here we have a song that's an A, and then the next one is going to be an F sharp, and then the next one is in D. So I never thought of that, Christopher. So that makes a lot more sense to me, as opposed to just having it, this is the natural resonance of the drum type of thing, and that's where it sounds the best, and let's just leave it at that.
Yeah, and I also appreciate the fact that in a lot of the pop type environments that I'm playing in, there's going to be a layer of samples over the top anyway.
Yeah.
So I want to be able to give the best natural sound that I can. And given that there are, smaller budgets and limited time, I don't want to spend time, retuning a kit. I mean, do we have the sound good? The pre's are good? The mic placement's good? Okay, awesome. I know you're going to drop a whole bunch of samples over the top. Let's get the take. Let's get the songs. Let's make it happen.
Get that vibe. Get that performance.
Yeah, very much so.
Let's take a moment right here and do a quick break for a word from our sponsors. We're back, and we're going to talk a little bit about miking techniques with Christopher here. So the first thing is, how do you go about it if you're dealing with miking your kit?
With a lot of trial and error, obviously, I've come to appreciate phase and the Hydra that particular thing can be potentially. But in terms of mics in my own studio, because I have a small space, I tend to have mics on the toms that will clip on, as opposed to having a lot of floor stands. Mm-hmm. So
does that present a real big problem on the hits, though?
It really doesn't. Okay. It really doesn't. The vibrations don't really translate. There's not a lot of rumble that's coming off of the clip itself. You're still getting that initial attack. You're getting a nice decay, and I've not really experienced much problem with that as far as the toms or the snare drum are concerned. So,
and which mic brand are you using on those?
I've been using the Sennheiser, the 904s. No,
Sennheiser 900 series.
Exactly. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, the 900 series, yeah. And then on the snare drum, 57, top and bottom.
For both?
On the overhead, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, I'm always experimenting.
Sure.
So I'm thinking about getting an SM81 for the bottom of the snare mic as an upgrade, like we were talking about a little bit the other day. Because I'm not. And we'll get into this more a little bit later, I assume. But, I'm not worried about a separate EQ channel for the bottom snare or the hi-hat. I'll just use a mic that has, the ability to high-low or just, neutral. So the mics are pointed pretty much toward the center of the drum. And the rack tom mic, as I'm looking at it, maybe is at about 1 o'clock or so, or between 12 and 1. The first floor tom is, again, probably between 12 and 1. And then the second floor tom it's around 11, just a little bit before 11, maybe just a little bit after 11. Mm-hmm. So I'm not picking up anything else. all that much. The overheads are equidistant from the center of the snare drum.
Yeah. How do you go about measuring that? Are you using a string, or you got some mathematical formula that you're using?
No, there's no real math. I have a tape measure.
And how
that's
far do you
similar
like
to the
to use
string
those?
concept.
How far do you like to place them apart or from the snare? How?
It's a triangle that's about 4.5 feet.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So they're closer because I'm using larger, darker cymbals. So I don't have these really splashy, high-endy type cymbals. They're Istanbul agaps. So they're hand hammered and they just have a beautiful shimmer. And so I can get away with dropping the mics a little bit.
Okay. How close to, now we got the distance obviously, but how, with the placement of your cymbals, how far away from the actual cymbals are you generally with your overheads?
Probably 3 feet.
Okay.
3 feet or so.
All right.
And again, spread for maybe 5 feet apart.
Right. And then same distance to the center of your snare type of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay. And then the mono room mic, that's about 6.5 feet in front of the kit at about high chest level, and I'm 5'11", so around there. And I'll play with the height.
Yeah.
Depending on what cymbals I'm using, because I don't want a lot of wash from the cymbals. I'm getting that from I want to be able to hear the entire kit.
Right. Yeah.
In that mono room mic, and just, and then you have to balance the way that you're playing as well. So it's nice to just concept. Listen. Yeah, it's nice to just listen to the mono room mic, and I can be like, okay, so I need to lay off a little bit on the hi-hat, dig into the kick a little bit more, and just make your adjustments from there.
That's very much how those guys did it way back in the era of Frank Sinatra. They had one mic in the room. Everybody was placed accordingly, the distance they wanted in terms of the mix on that mic. That sounds like you're using it kind of the same way to approach how you're hitting the drums.
Yeah, trying to. Yeah, absolutely.
That's something that I've come across where I think it can be difficult, let's say, for some players that are primarily live drummers.
Where they're constantly bashing.
Yeah. And I think for some, it's difficult to sort of alter their playing style for another medium when you're in the studio, where you might have to adjust a little bit regardless of what instrument you play, because you're now aware of everything that's going on and you're picking up every little thing, right? So
Exactly.
All right. And then going back to the miking here, do you have a particular mic that you're also using for the hi-hat, or is that caught in the overheads?
I do have a mic on the hi-hat. Right now it's a Sennheiser 906, which is a little square microphone that they use a lot for guitar cabinets. Mm-hmm. It's a low profile, which I like. And one of the studios that I do a lot of work at, we were just like, we were using an SM7, one of the Shure SM7s. And we're just like, we want to try something different. What do we have? And I was like, well, let's try the 906. I'm like, okay. And, again, just kind of set the switch, take out, all the low end. Mm. And so you just have this bright kind of crispiness that works for the hi-hat, but I'm really using very, very little of it, because I tend to use bigger hi-hats. I'm using 15 and 16 and sometimes 17-inch hi-hats. So
that is large. What's the average?
Yeah.
Like 13 or 12?
13 or 14.
Okay.
13 or 14. Yeah. Since moving out here, my sound concept has changed dramatically, where when I moved out here, it was very much like that Dave Weckl, Vinnie Colaiuta kind of, a lot of splash cymbals and smaller crashes and just make a quick statement. And, you start playing with singer-songwriters and you want to hit something once and just have it ring over the bar line. You want to have your tuning a little bit different. So, there feels like there's more breadth and more kind of depth and distance to the drum kit. So, now I can't see myself going back to the all kind of thing. I just want to, I want to be able to just hit it once and just, just let it go.
Glorious decay.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah.
So what's the number of tracks that you've got in terms of mics then?
I'm running 11 tracks right now. Kick in, kick out, snare top, snare bottom, hat, rack, floor, overheads, and then a mono room.
Gotcha. And we discussed this a little bit the other day in terms of what is the processing that you're using on each of these tracks? Is there a lot of processing, or is it just a pre kind of thing? What's your deal?
Right now, it's just the pre, and pretty soon it's going to include some analog EQing as well on kick-in, snare top, overheads, and all the toms, because you're working within limitations, and one of the limitations is my room, the size, and all that. So there are certain things that I want to be able to pull out in order to really give as much tone, as much, just solid analog goodness as I can. So the EQs are really going to help to take out, like, particularly my room, or just in general, like the 400, for kick and toms, just kind of scoop some of that,
the muddiness
out.
Boxing,
the muddiness and the boxiness, get rid of that. I've been sending people just raw tracks. I've not been so ego driven as to want to do mixes or whatever, but now that I've gotten some of the stuff back that people have sent me, of the raw tracks that I've sent them, I am starting to think about doing a really, really rough mix and just kind of giving them. It's like, I was thinking something like this for this particular drum performance. That way they have somewhere to go.
You're not pre-processing your raw tracks, so to speak. You're actually sending them the actual raw track.
Yeah, absolutely. I just kind of felt like I asked a lot of producers and a lot of engineers, drummer friends of mine as well, that have been doing this for a lot longer than I have. To a person, they all said, if you're just starting out, just send raw tracks. Then if you want to start messing around with doing mixing and all that stuff, which you probably will, because you're going to start hearing stuff and it's going to be like, well, they definitely didn't know how to do that very well, did they? I sorry to say.
No, it's a common thing when people are learning, or they don't understand that they're dealing with the raw track. And maybe their room has the exact opposite of the issue that you're hearing in your room. So they don't hear the same problem as it arises because it's being countered out, so to speak.
Yeah, that's definitely possible as well. The raw track seems to be the best way at this point, not only to get the job at hand done, but also, it just affords me every opportunity I have to go in and muck around and make noise and record stuff. You're building, incrementally, to the skill set that you have, and being able to be more effective with troubleshooting when, the same boneheaded things that you have done the last 10 sessions come up again. You're like, oh yeah, that's right, I forgot to do that, didn't I? So yeah, absolutely. And I've actually got a little checklist.
That's cool.
Yeah, I'm just like, did you do this? Did you do this? Did you do this? Did you do that? And kind of look at it. I was like, man, you're such a blockhead, but it works.
Okay,
it definitely works. Yeah, totally.
So just to sort of talk about the processing when you're sending the raw tracks, when you're tracking not at your place, but if you're going to, somebody else's studio or somebody else's room, how involved do you find that you get with, if at all, with any processing that might happen at those tracking sessions? I mean, do you find that engineers would like to have perhaps tickling your drums with slight compression going in, or is that generally a big no-no? Because I know Jody and I have a pretty strong opinion about that if you don't really know what you're doing.
Well, yeah,
but also obviously with EQ and things, because I think overall, there's a lot of stuff going on there, because I think tracking a live drum kit is probably one of the most technically challenging things that you can do when it comes to sort of standard recording, because you're dealing with so many parameters. Because never mind just miking up a guitar cabinet, it's just like, okay, put it in front of where it sounds good and you can't really mess up. But with drums, not only do you have the bleed, but you got the phase, and you got, how much is the overhead going to pick up? Are we going to use a room mic? All of these parameters they're moving. So it's a process that is really easy to mess up, I think.
Yeah.
So to go back to my original question, with the compression, how much processing are going in with somebody when you're going to somebody else's place?
When I'm going to somebody else's place, I have the good fortune of working with people that know what they're doing. So I'm going to trust their judgment, because typically, like if I'm going to Stag Street or if I'm going to NRG or East West or whatever, they know the room.
Right.
So, and they know the gear. So if I go in and listen back and I'm like, that sounds a little bit boxy, or, it feels, I'm not feeling the same thing coming through the speakers as I am when I'm actually playing the kit. It's a little bit of a negotiation, but I don't try to insinuate myself too much.
It's that ego
because
thing.
Ultimately, yeah, I mean, if I'm going into somebody else's room, the chances are it's either for them or it's for an artist that they're producing. So they already have their concept.
Right.
So as long as I've got a sound that is relatively close to what I'm used to, then I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
That works.
Okay, that's fair enough. Yeah, I mean, there's certainly something to be said for a person that works in that space all the time. We can assume that they know the room and they know the benefits and the drawbacks of that room. So this is why they're doing certain things. Yeah.
Sometimes
I do ask a lot of questions. I do ask a lot of questions when I go into other people's studios. I'm like, well, what kind of compression are you using? Why are you using that kind of compression? Is it based on the room? Is it based on the drums? Is it based on the song?
And how often are they giving you answers?
Pretty much all the time.
Right.
Yeah, pretty much all the time. I mean, it's not a don't pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. I mean, if I wanted to find out what they were doing, I could go on the internet and find out like that.
Sure.
Why don't I just ask the person who's actually doing it? Because I want to be an advocate for them just as much as I want them to be an advocate for me.
There you go.
So if I'm asking good questions and they see that I'm easy to work with, if it's the first time that I've worked with them, and then they're seeing what kind of performance they're getting out of me, all of a sudden I've got another ally in another studio who's going to be like, you know what? I just did this session with this guy, Christopher Allis,
and he's really
he came in, his gear sounded great. He was really easy to work with. We got finished ahead of time. Call him.
Yeah.
Yay. That's what we want.
Win.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, this guy Christopher, he came in and changed all my compression and EQ settings, and he played whatever he wanted, right? Yeah. Don't be that guy, right? Yeah.
Yeah, well, we know plenty of guys like that in this town anyway, so.
But just like you mentioned at the top here, like they tend to perhaps not work all that often.
Yeah,
so it is a people business, definitely. And
it is.
Yeah, and I'm constantly reminded of this saying, like, well, it's not what you do, it's who you know. Well, but that's only half true, because it is true. It is who you know, but it's also how you impress who you know, because nobody's going to go to bat for you if they know or are unsure if you can deliver or not. So,
yeah.
Well, here's a question for you in regards to something of that nature. I'm sure you're familiar with Josh Freese.
Oh, I love Josh.
Isn't he? He's a great drummer. There's a story that I had heard. A friend of mine was helping produce a track for a rather well-known Japanese artist, and they kept trying to get the proper fill for a part in this song, and they brought in multiple drummers just for the fill. And as the story goes that was told to me, Josh comes in, listens to it, hits one tom, boink, that's it. And they're like, brilliant, we got it. That's what it needed. Kind of thing. And everybody else was coming in apparently and just trying to throw the craziest fill possible.
Yeah.
And Josh is known for being one of those kind of players as well, who can play ridiculous fills, but he just hit a single tom and it was done.
Well, I mean, he's a perfect example, and his probably his main mentor, like Vinny Colaiuta, they are guys that are going to play what is correct for the song. You have to be willing to play for the song. You have to be willing to listen to what the song needs and then execute that. And that's a perfect example of Josh being Josh, basically.
Sure.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
Vinny could have come in and done something completely different, and it would have been just as appropriate, because in both instances, they're not trying to do the dig me fill. They're trying to be like, what punctuation mark, i.e. this fill, what punctuation mark is going to get us to the next part of the song?
Right.
Right. Yeah.
What's the link? And it could either be a boom, or it could be a boom, or whatever the hell it happens to be. But, you have to be willing to listen to that and then make that happen. So,
How
yeah.
often, on that note, I was just thinking of something when you're mentioning that. How often when you go into track for a song, have you heard either a demo for it, or do you have the vocal line the way it's going to be, or a demo vocal there? And how often do you sort of adjust your fills or your parts depending on a vocal line that you might be cautious to step over?
If it's a library kind of track, I very rarely, if ever, have heard the song beforehand. And there are times where they'll just kind of play certain reference songs for me, and they won't even have anything. They'll just be like,
we want this kind of vibe type of thing.
We want this kind of vibe, and it needs to be 16 bars for the verse, 8 bars for the chorus. Repeat that. Do something different for a bridge section. Drop off for the first half for the last chorus. Pick it back up. Second end chorus. Go a little bit crazier. End on the end of 2 bar 17 of that second chorus. I'm like, okay, and you chart it all out. And,
right.
Okay, and then bang, and then they'll write the track around it. If it is a more traditional singer-songwriter kind of session,
yeah,
maybe I'll have a rough demo, like a little iPhone recording. And in those instances, I'll always ask for the lyric sheet, because I need to understand emotionally what's going on within the song. I'm not going to necessarily get. I'm not going to get that. I'm not going to get that from a chord chart. I am going to get that from the lyrics. So if I have a conversation with a songwriter, I'm like, who are some of your influences? What were you going for in this song? Then I can attempt to put myself in the emotional headspace that the song requires, and then that informs my drum part.
When do you think you started asking those questions? Because that is very interesting. And I don't recall you and I in our recording sessions that we did really coming across on those kind of questions. So I'm just kind of curious when you picked that up.
It wouldn't have been too long after we worked together in that studio kind of environment, because what I found happening was I started getting calls from a lot of different female singer-songwriters. I think partially it was the time,
sure,
but I also think partially it was because upon meeting me, at Genghis Cohen or the Mint or whatever, they're like, I don't feel threatened by this person. I.e., this is a person that I would potentially be willing to work with. I'm going to sit down with him, talk to him, and find out what's going on. And then I started developing kind of a list of questions that I would ask people.
Sure.
Who are some of your influences? What have you been listening to lately? Just for fun. From there, I was able to start to kind of understand just how different people related to what they were writing, and how they related to me, and how they related to the studio environment, because it's a very, very daunting thing. If you're a songwriter who is stepping foot in a studio for the first time, you've got a lot of things swirling in your head. I don't want to add to that swirling vortex. So how can I be, as much as I can be, how can I be a centering influence for you? They're like, okay, I know my drummer is going to be fine because we already talked.
Right.
Yeah.
So I don't need to worry about them. So all I need to worry about is this, 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 and this. So it's that kind of thing. And it's not exclusive. Those questions aren't exclusive to just working with female songwriters. I ask it of anybody that I work with now.
Sure.
That just allows me to get into the headspace of whoever it is that I'm working with. Not in a psychoanalysis way, but just what do I need to do to emotionally fit that particular song or this cycle of songs that we're recording.
Right. That makes good sense. And I think probably too, it was, as I've been told, some of the stuff when I had other people recording it at the time was technically easier because I already had a roadmap oftentimes. So it probably made it easier in that regard.
Well, you were also much more able to communicate what it is that you were looking for as well, because you had more of a vision
right.
of what it was that you wanted out of the song. Not everybody necessarily has that same understanding of what they want specifically. So as a result, it takes a little bit of time to
develop the rapport, ask the questions.
Yeah, exactly.
Gotcha. Good to know.
On the note there with performance and things, and you mentioned Jody having a fairly well-defined view of what he heard for his song. How often, if at all, would you rather go in with your mindset and somewhat of a clean slate when it comes to parts, as opposed to perhaps, I have an idea. I want you to go with just a ride cymbal on this section, and I want there, and then I want like a crash ride thing going on. Or would you prefer to go in, I kind of know what the gist of the song is, but I kind of want to see what a drummer would do here, as opposed to, let's say, my case, a guitar player who's programmed a part that I think sounds cool. Because you're obviously coming from a much different vocabulary. Is that something that you come across at all, or do you not even think in those terms where it's just like, he knows what they want, I'm going to give him that? Or do you feel like you could better serve the song given their information that you're given, but bring it up or kick it up another couple of notches?
It really depends on the situation. I think that there are times where I think I'm becoming better at being able to determine whether or not things are going to stay the way that they were, either in a pre-production rehearsal or based on the conversation that we had beforehand. But there are a lot of times where we'll get in and they'll just start wanting to make a million different changes. This really isn't working now. And sometimes that's legitimate. And then there are other times where that's just somebody, pouncing about really and buying into the hype, basically. It's like, I'm in a big studio now, and so I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this. I was like, well, that's not what we talked about, but, I'm not going to pick that fight at that point. I was like, okay, all right, let's give that a shot. And inevitably, it's going to go one of two ways. I'm either going to be like, oh, okay, fair play. That was actually a cool idea. Or, that really didn't work out all that well, did it? So let's go back to plan A, and let's at least get that down. That's usually the way I was like, let's table this. Let's get the original idea down first, because that's what we had discussed. And then let's play around a little bit. Let's utilize our time as wisely as we can. So let's get the sure thing that we were talking about, and then let's mess around and see if we can come up with something that's different. Not necessarily better, but different. That's kind of fitting where your head is at. And then you can use either one.
Sage advice right there.
Whatever.
Sage advice.
Absolutely.
We're going to interrupt this for just a moment to get a word from our sponsors. All right, we're back.
I have one more technique question type of thing that I would like to ask Jody. I'm not sure if there's too much more, but when we're talking about recording, there's a technique I hear a little bit about, and it's something that you and Jody did kind of, sort of, back when you were using your V-drum kit. And that would be the idea of recording the drums in two different passes, where on pass one, you record nothing but the shells. And then in the second pass, nothing but the cymbals, right? So you're essentially overheads and all this kind of stuff. Is that something that you have done? And if so, pros and cons, and if you have any feelings about that technique of doing it?
Oh, I've done even one better as well. So there's a third way of doing it, which is recording each individual piece of the drum kit completely separate.
Oh, Jesus Christ!
one drum at a time.
Why not just use a sample library at that point?
Well, what's interesting about that is, and I asked that same question, and So in a situation where I'm having like this was forever ago, and the person only had like one mic pre, and it was kind
Oh,
of.
okay.
So I was like, okay, so
Gear limitation.
then
yeah,
but that gear limitation actually provided for a really interesting result, because what I would do is I would air drum the hi-hat and the snare drum or whatever,
mm-hmm.
and then just play the kick drum pattern.
Right.
So I have that movement in my body like I'm playing the whole kit, even though I don't have the actual sound.
Right.
So when you put it all together, it still sounds like me. It still feels like me.
Right.
But because of the limitation of the gear, we had to do it that way.
Right.
That's one way of doing it.
But that's a creative. There's one of those things that you said, the gear limitation forced your hand to do it in a really creative way. So that's interesting. And obviously the other of separating the kit pieces and the overheads would be for control when it comes to the mixing stage, right? You have less bleed to worry about, and you got this and that type of thing.
Yeah, exactly. But even in that situation, like I'm still playing along,
right?
Air drumming, and then bang, and maybe I'll hit the bass drum as well to give a little extra oomph when I'm accenting those crashes or whatever.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So bang, 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 whatever.
Right.
And then so you've got a little extra oomph that you can throw into the track when you're mixing it, because you've essentially got, another kick going as well.
Right. Okay. I just wanted to get your opinion on that, because I think it's interesting, but it's not, I would imagine from a drummer perspective that might take a little bit of getting used to for some drummers. Like it would have to feel a little weird. Yeah.
Yeah, it does. But it's like, so let me get this straight. You're asking me to do something. I still get to play music. I still get to do this thing that I love. You're asking me to work outside of my comfort zone. Maybe I'll learn something. So am I really going to complain about this?
Yeah, I mean,
no. Let's just freaking get it.
Yeah.
Let's just freaking get it done.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Well, if I come out of it knowing that I don't.
Oh, sorry. And to be fair, when Chris asked the question, we didn't actually track the V drums and then the cymbals. We actually tracked the cymbals and the V drums at the same time.
Right. But that just triggered my memory there from the concept of doing that, because that was, if I remember correctly, and I may not, but it was the shells of the V drum kit sounded really good for the time, because you could have anything, trigger anything, but the cymbals left a little bit to be desired.
Oh, so they left a lot to be desired.
And still do, to be quite honest. I mean, again, you've got such huge sample times for most cymbals that there's just no way that you're going to be able to have an affordable, quote unquote, affordable kit, electronic kit, with the kinds of cymbal samples that are going to give you that decay, like the processing power. I mean, that's why people are walking around with a laptop and using TuneTrack or whatever they happen to be using, because at least they are massive sample libraries, and you are able to trigger, and you've only got 128 steps of dynamics.
Right. Yeah.
Until MIDI 2.0 comes out, which should be soon.
Well, sure.
But what's your experience with, besides Jody back in the 1700s, of playing an electronic kit, but using, like you said, like Superior Drummer or something like that as your sample source? How does that, if at all, change your feel for when you're playing?
I'm definitely playing lighter.
Yeah.
I don't have to worry about extracting a sound out of the drum,
right?
Because it's just an impulse.
Yeah.
So I can play lighter.
Mm-hmm.
That helps with the way that the samples are actually tracking. So there's no double triggering or anything like that.
Right.
I don't approach any of it too terribly differently, though, beyond just playing a little bit lighter, because I'm setting the kit up exactly as I would my acoustic kit. Right. So it's the same physical movement around the kit, and everything is in the same relative position. It's just that the sizes of the targets are a little bit smaller. That's all. Sure. And I'm like, oh, okay, I can do that. So it's cool. It's cool that way.
Awesome.
Fantastic.
Jody, you got anything else?
No, I think we should. Well, actually, I do want to bring something up. There was an instance where we played a gig, all three of us, at the gig in LA. And it happened to be a gig that I, as a guitar player, you as a guitar player, I don't remember him saying much about the drums on that gig, but something very interesting happened with the sound man, and something actually also very interesting happened backstage. And the backstage thing is that I ran into Eric Dover, and I don't know if many people out there know who Eric Dover was, but he's one of my favorite guitar player singers in the world. He's just absolutely astounding.
I just did a gig with him this past weekend.
Did you really?
Oh yeah, we gig all the time actually.
You play with him, or just you were on the same stage?
Well, I know, we play together. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Because that night was the night I met him for the first time ever. And because of my fanaticism, so to speak, about Jellyfish and Imperial Drag, he stuck around to watch our sound check and then came up to me afterwards and paid us a huge compliment. So that was like really awesome to me.
He is good people.
Oh, and he's an amazing musician to boot as well.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing about that, and why I bring it up, has everything to do with volume. And we have talked a little bit about how hard you're hitting and other things. We were sound checking, and the sound guy was scratching his head, and he says to us, I've never said this before, but both of you guitar players can turn up. And you, the other day, as we were testing this out, mentioned that you have had people say, can you hit harder for a live thing? And your response was,
why?
Yeah.
I mean, basically, it's like, turn the gates down and just let me play the way that I play. That is slightly egotistical, but I don't want to have to play louder, because then that's going to change the way that the vocalist is relating to the stage. And maybe they're going to need to have their monitor turned up as a result of the fact that you're asking me to play louder. That's going to affect the way that they are, relating to the song, dealing with the song. Like, just turn the gates down and let me do my thing and let that person be comfortable, because ultimately it's their song. They're up front. I'm in the back. Let them do their thing. Let them get their point across, and let me help them do that. So.
Sure. This is a great way to look at it.
We're going to wrap this up here, and we have 3 questions that we tend to ask here as a standard kind of thing. So the first one, prepare. Can we get a drum roll before we get going? All right. So the first question is, what's your favorite piece of gear that you can't live without?
Oh,
and no, you can't pick 2. We need one.
Okay, I have a 6.5 by 14 copper phonic Ludwig snare drum. Basically, it looks like every other Ludwig snare drum, but it's a copper shell, and it's a raw copper shell, and there's nothing that snare drum can't do.
Cool.
And I've got a bunch of beautiful Black Beauties and bronze shell drums and all that stuff, and I will bring them with me to sessions, but that copper phonic, that's the drum that always gets put up first, and usually it stays.
This is going to be a corny question, but based on the fact that you've said it's a copper thing, you've seen those advertisements for, like, I wear copper wraps around my shoulders or my knees. Does it make you feel calm and less inflamed for playing that?
less inflamed.
All right, Jody, next question.
Christopher, what is the biggest lesson that you have learned in your career?
Oh, goodness. Listen.
The act of listening.
Actually, that's great that you said that word, the act of listening. It's active listening, not passive listening, because there's such a huge difference between hearing and listening.
Yeah.
And I don't want to just hear music. I want to listen to music. I don't want to just hear the conversation. I want to listen to the conversation. And that was a huge aha moment where it's like, you know what? If I focus just ever so slightly differently, what I gain from that active listening process is, it's exponentially larger than it would be otherwise. And it's helped me not only behind the drum kit, but certainly it's helped me in front of the drum kit in all of my relationships as well. So yeah, active listening, absolutely.
Very cool.
Okay.
And last one, and I think you might have already answered this with that previous reply here, but what's the piece of advice that you universally give to people that might ask you questions about your career or they strive to be in your position?
Say yes.
Okay.
Because if you say no to stuff, you're cutting out a host of different potential opportunities. But if you say yes and you experience it, then you can make the decision of whether or not you want to do it again. But if you say no immediately, or if you feel like you need to be in a corner office already, as opposed to, doing a coffee run or whatever, just say yes to whatever opportunities seem potentially reasonable. There's that equation that I always go by. It's like, you've got three variables: the hang, the music, and the money. Right. And if any two of those variables are satisfied, then it's pretty reasonable that you can say yes to whatever it is. If all three are satisfied, then you absolutely say yes, and you hope that you can maintain the gig for a long time. If only one variable is satisfied, then really the onus is on you to make the decision. Do I want to take a chance and do this? Or do I want to just say no and be okay with not experiencing that? My advice is, say yes when it seems reasonable and appropriate. And then you can make the decision if you want to say yes to that further down the line, if and when it comes up again.
Yeah. That's good advice right there.
Excellent advice. We'll just have to thank Christopher for coming on. This was really, really cool. There's a lot of great advice and there are a lot of great techniques. So thank you for doing this, Christopher. Really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me. I really, really appreciate it. It was a lot of fun.
And now it's Friday Finds. Chris, what have you got for us?
I discovered a sample library this week that I thought was really, really cool sounding. It's from a company called Have Audio. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to say this in very pronounced Swedish because I can. It's called Nordisk Kontrabas. And
say that 10 times fast.
Yeah. No, but what it is, it's essentially a stand-up bass, a Nordic stand-up bass that has, in this sample library, has this very sort of dark, sort of Scandinavian type of cold sound to it, like you might hear in a lot of the Scandinavian detective dramas or anything like that. It was a very, very cool sounding sample instrument that I thought sounded really, really cool, and I'm definitely going to give that a long, hard look. So Have Audio Nordisk Kontrabas. What about you, Jody?
I'm going to go with the fact that Apple just dropped a couple of song examples from Dua Lipa and Lady Gaga for GarageBand users. And that will allow you to dig into some of the sounds that they use to create some of their hits. So if you want to explore as a budding producer or recording engineer or sound designer, something that has already been a hit, you can take a look at what Apple has dropped in relation to some Dua Lipa and Lady Gaga songs. While we've got your attention, we'd like you to go to the website at InsideTheRecordingStudio.com and sign up for our email list. Doing so will get you weekly reminders about shows as they come out and the Tuesday tips that happen every Tuesday. In addition to that, when we're running a giveaway, you are automatically entered to possibly win that giveaway. And we currently have 2 winners for this week's giveaway. We'd like to congratulate our July 2021 winners of the LMC Plus SSL compressor. They are
Dennis Pavlov
and David Fredrickson. Congratulations, and thank you for being a loyal listener to the podcast. In addition to that, if you send us an email at goldstar, GOLDSTAR, at InsideTheRecordingStudio.com with the word drummer, you'll get something cool back in your inbox. If you have a topic of suggestion for us to explain in a future episode, contact us on our contact page at the website, and we'll put it into consideration for a future episode. And with that, I'll say, see you next week, Chris.
See you, Jody. Thank you, Christopher.
Thanks, you guys. Again, appreciate it greatly.